Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and we are back again for another Star Wars discussion. I'm joined by Ragekill. Give me a woo.
Woo!
And Rainick. Give me a yay.
Konnichiwa waffle.
Okay, there you go. And finally, Wolfman.
Hey, how's it going, everybody?
Alright, so...
Woo! Oh, sorry.
That too. Alright, so Empire Strikes Back. This is a film that was sort of like the holy grail for me back around 1995 to 6 because I didn't have that on VHS. I only had a vague recollection of seeing it. When the special editions finally came out, I finally got to see it, and I watched it every day for an entire summer. Primarily just for the Battle of Endor, Battle of Hoth segment. So, when did you guys first see Empire?
Well, for me, this was actually shortly after seeing, episode 4, because they were actually doing, the local TV station was doing a movie marathon because they had nothing to air. So it was like, okay, I'm good. Commercial break, I'm making popcorn.
Rage? Rage has been kidnapped by the Sarlacc.
Sorry
Is
about
he even
that.
alive?
Oh, shit. Hello?
Yeah,
Hello?
you're here.
Oh, God. Sorry, Discord is being stupid.
Turn the pornography off.
Oh, my God.
Yeah,
I
stop,
was
There's
playing
porn.
pornography.
stop
But the
watching.
internet is for porn.
Just close all the images with a naked Ula.
No. But it's Star Wars, the Empire... No, I got no name top of my head. I can't...
Well, that collapsed
Hey.
quickly.
Like a flan in a cupboard.
Wow, Discord's still frozen. It's lovely. So, anyways, first time Empire Strikes Back. Probably be about when I got that VHS set of the special editions. And, I mean, it's The Empire Strikes Back.
That's it?
It's a bit underwhelming, but okay.
Wolfman, what do you got?
First time I saw Empire Strikes Back was, once again, it was, like I said last episode, where every tape was just a mishmash of everything. There was nothing dedicated to it. And I saw Empire Strikes Back, and I absolutely loved it. And the only problem is that the tape ended right after Han Solo got frozen in Carbonite. Like, I'll still never forget. He falls on his back, and then you may take Captain Solo, reset the chamber for Skywalker, and then you hear. So it stuck out to me because it was a really, really, really good movie, and also because to me it was the best of the three, and also I wanted to see the goddamn ending.
Well, that's the thing about Empire, is that it's a perfect sequel that sadly is open-ended. Because the sequel we would eventually get was, shall we say, lacking in quality. So, we'll do the typical synopsis. And, so, Empire Strikes Back takes place a few years after the end of Episode 4. And what you have is the Empire trying to find the Rebels. They have a new secret base on the ice planet Hoth, which is actually what we're looking at here in Super Star Wars. Sadly, the game glitched out. So, I'm kind of screwed on that one. But, all that being said, what you have with Empire is you have a little bit of canon discontinuity at the very beginning of the film, if you actually have read the Marvel Comics, which I have to some degree. I haven't read them all, but I've read most of them. When Hoth first showed up in the comics that were released between Episode 4 and 5, Hoth was originally a massive jungle planet, and one of the Rogue Squadron rogues ended up dying. But he came back to life, and it was actually... It's more funny than it sounds. But anyway, so you got Hoth, Ice Planet, and actually I missed an entire chunk of the movie. It actually starts up on a... And Rage is back! He escaped the Sarlacc. And Dengar nursed him back to health. We can at least assume he did. So what happens is the Empire is sending out probe droids to try to find the Rebels, and they end up finding them on the ice planet Hoth. the intro to Empire is a bit slow, actually. You have Luke and Han, looking for various... Actually, what were they doing out there? I don't remember.
Looking for probe droids.
So they knew there were probe droids coming? I thought they just kind of found that by random, though.
No, they found it by random because what they were doing was they were setting up markers just as like an early warning system. And that's when the first asteroid landed. Luke went to go investigate. And then, hey, what's wrong, girl? Do you smell something?
Oh, right. And that's when he gets into a car accident.
He got knocked the fuck out.
Because he got...
And in real life, he almost freaking died.
Yes.
Oh, the car accident, yeah.
Yeah, and that's... Now, I have read that him getting attacked by the Wampa was actually already in the script. It was just sort of a... I guess I wouldn't say a lucky accident, but it's a good way to show that he has a massive scar on his face. So
yeah, let's just say Murphy's Law really struck here, but thankfully there was a way around it.
Yeah.
And of course, this is also the first time we get to see Luke do anything Jedi-related outside of that one scene at the end of Episode 4. Because he gets dragged back to the Wampa's lair. And now, in the special edition, you see more of the Wampa, but in the original, I don't think you saw altogether that much of it.
Now, you only really see, in the original edition, you only really see the upper torso of the Wampa. You don't really see that much of him.
And then you see like a Muppet of it later on, and then you see an arm fall.
Yeah.
The special edition, man, that was ridiculous.
And so what ends up happening is he uses his lightsaber to escape. We actually see him use a force pull. Now, one of the things about that is like, okay, we actually see the force as being like a pretty big deal. It was actually hard for him to do that, which just doesn't really square with what we'd see Galen Merrick do in that goddamn Force Unleashed game, pulling a Star Destroyer out of the sky!
Well, number one, the Force is hard to use for somebody who's untrained. Luke right now is semi-untrained. He's only had the rudiments. And as per the, Hoth being a quote-unquote jungle planet, a lot of things were made retroactively non-canon, and I'm going to count The Force Unleashed as retroactively non-canon.
I never even considered it canon to begin with. But anyway, of course, Luke escapes and Han finds him. And then, of course, the film really begins with the Battle of Endor. The Battle of Endor, I think, is
Luke didn't escape immediately. I mean, he kind of goes through some hypothermia.
Well, there's that too. And then, of course, you see the scene where... You then, of course, have the famous scene. I just want to get to the Battle of Endor. Well, not Battle of Hoth. Damn, my brain is not working today. No sleep can do that.
True.
But yeah, there's the famous scene where he cuts open the Tauntaun, and Han cuts open the Tauntaun and shoves Luke in, which is fairly memorable, I suppose. But yeah, by this point,
world's most uncomfortable sleeping bag.
The Tauntauns just had like that awesome sound, that thing. It's not. I just couldn't get over that sound, and then all I remember when he cut the thing's stomach open was all those tubes coming out of it.
Well, I think I don't know if it was a joke or if it really existed. Evidently, there was a Tauntaun sleeping bag. I'm not sure if that was a joke or real. I wouldn't.
Originally, it wasn't. It wasn't during this movie's release. It was actually later. It was ThinkGeek that put it out, licensing it from Lucas.
Okay.
That's funny.
I thought that might have actually been real. I mean, you never know.
It is real, but it wasn't during this movie.
Well, the only way that they could get it to really work right is that if it smelled bad on the outside.
They could do that.
That can be fixed.
So after Luke gets rescued, the Empire is coming to take out the rebels at Echo Base. Now, of course, there's all sorts of other build-up to this, but I want to get to the goddamn battle, goddammit. That battle...
It's definitely understandable why you do, because this is actually where Lucas kind of channels the spirit of Ray Harryhausen for a while.
Yeah.
Go for it. Go ahead, I'll elucidate a little bit later.
Okay. So what you have with the Battle of Hoth here is you have a massive ground battle, that still looks pretty good today. it's all practical effects. This is where we finally see the AT-AT. This is where we see just an intersection, if you will, of proper music, of proper direction, just everything coming together to make one of the great cinematic battles of our time, of any time even.
And some of the most gorgeous stop-motion animation on the AT-ATs and AT-STs you will see anywhere. That's what I say. He really channeled the spirit of Ray Harryhausen with these shots right here.
And
everything
really,
is doing perfect.
And when it comes to stop motion, I mean, stop motion in most everything it's in looks kind of phony. Whereas in this, it looks real. The frame rate he's using doesn't look jerky at all, which I honestly don't know how they did it.
Well, actually, how they did it is twofold. Number one, he realized the limitation of the film being 24 frames per second. He also realized the limitation of scale. So the camera angles for the AT-ATs are just right to give that sense of scale of, okay, they're massive. And these things in lore are massive. I mean, when one of these things could easily stomp an Abrams tank, you know you're kind of big. That, and coupled with the fact that he's working with something that's supposed to be mechanical, so you don't have to be as fluid as something that's organic. So it just, everything is perfectly done from an effects point of view to just make it work.
And when it comes to like the pacing of the battle, it never gets it never gets overdrawn. So many modern CG fests today, you know, it's like they just goes on and on and on. It lasts absolutely as long as it needs to. And it actually has a lot of emotional weight. There are times when you're not really sure if Luke can get out of it. And, you know, it's like, this is just the second film. You never know if they're going to just kill off Luke, you know, in the first 10 minutes of the movie, then follow some new characters. So, the battle... Are we going?
They could have actually, from a story writing perspective, Lucas could have killed off Luke and just gone to Leia, and while it would have been, you know, just absolutely crippling from somebody who, you know, does write and has been published, you could have actually salvaged that as its own story. Would it be advisable? No, but you could do it.
So the battle begins when the Empire discovers Hoth, and they do it because there's a probe droid, and Han Solo and Chewbacca actually find the probe droid and shoot it. Now, the logistics of actually sending probe droids to every planet of the galaxy, that's where you just have to repeat to yourself, it's just a movie, you probably should just relax.
Well, yes and no. Remember, this is the Empire. They have pretty much almost unilateral control of the known space of this galaxy. That being said, they also, much like governments today, spend.
So, they end up finding it. We get introduced to the Executor-class Star Dreadnought, which is really one of the best ship designs in Star Wars. I mean, it's huge, it's big, I mean, it utterly dwarfs a typical Imperial-class Star Destroyer. It is an absolutely beautiful ship.
Yeah, especially if you get one of the model kits, if you're lucky enough to own one, the detail on it is incredible. Oh,
I have wanted one of those literally for years, but alas, they're generally very expensive for those who might want to find one. So, this is also a scene shortly before the Battle of Hoth, where we're introduced to angry Vader. Now, we knew that Vader was kind of a unhinged kind of guy in the very first film, but here we've got super angry Vader. And if you follow the Marvel Comics, it's easy to see why... Oh, don't save! It's easy to see why Vader was so angry, because he had been constantly trying to capture Luke for like 2 years by this point.
3 years, actually.
Oh, it's 3? Okay.
Yeah.
So he is pissed off, like, throughout the entire movie. And one of the first things we actually see Vader do is just straight up choke somebody out.
Well, that guy fucking deserved it, though. Admiral Lotz was a dumb shit.
Is Darth Vader gonna have to choke a bitch?
And he does, and that's one of the things. It's like, he does that. He chokes one other person in the film. Like, this is the one movie that shows that Vader is not somebody to be crossed.
I think, well, there was Admiral Lazel, and I think it was Nita who got choked out, too.
And we'll get to him in a minute, because I actually do want to talk about him a little bit. Because I don't think Vader should have actually done that, but we got to actually work up to that. So, he kills Admiral Ozzel, and you're now in command, Admiral Piett. And Admiral Piett will actually be a part of the Star Wars films for one more movie. He actually does get to survive. Spoiler
As a
alert.
note, who in the heck thinks it's a good idea to piss off a 7-foot-tall man in all black? You never see his face. He's got a lightsaber, and for all you know, even if the Force didn't exist, this son of a bitch, you've seen what he can do.
I know
The guy had it coming.
I think he was just so arrogant. It's like, oh, he's not going to do anything. Yeah, lightsaber, whatever. He's got a torso light bright. Yeah, I bet he's real tough.
Well, one thing that I wanted to add too, since we're still kind of in the area of the Battle of Hoth, one thing that they did a lot, not a lot, but quite a bit of in this film that they didn't do in the next one or any after, was they did a lot of POV flying shots, and I really liked them. And I felt it was badass because it kind of like really immersed you into the movie. Like when Luke takes enough hits in the speeder, you get a first-person shot inside the cockpit of it crashing into the snow. And it was just one of those, wow, I kind of feel like I'm in the action type of moments.
It's actually very important that the first-person shots are in this, because this inspired so many people in creative in terms of making video games. If not for this, not for those scenes, not for those expertly shot, expertly crafted scenes, the space of video gaming would just be nowhere near what it is. I mean,
well, yeah, because you wanted to capture that experience, especially when it's like, what's one thing that you've always wanted to do? Fly an X-Wing, fly a TIE fighter, and seeing that just made you want to do it all the more. So you had to strive for that in the video game field.
Yeah, it's been the going thing for all of my life.
Yeah, because what's the first thing you do when you pick up like Rogue Squadron? Switch that shit inside the cockpit.
Yep.
Speaking of
Well,
which,
back then it was, play the arcade game.
I love that game.
which is one of those games that definitely has aged a bit, though.
The vector game? Yeah, it has. But
Yeah.
if you're viewing it on the LCD monitor, yes, incredibly, it does not look good at all. But viewing that on a CRT vector display still looks great.
Oh yeah.
I need to do that at some point. All right,
No,
so
believe me, there's nothing like seeing a vector screen like in its proper form. Like it pops out so nicely.
Remind me to go up there and just bring the CRTs.
the Vectrex. How little we knew thee. And I gotta say, even with invincibility on, this game is not particularly easy. There's a lot of insta-kill deaths. But anyway, back to the film. One thing I did not mention, I'm kind of skipping around. I gotta admit, I probably should have done this on a different day. But yeah, it's Star Wars. You can keep up because it's not like this is a plot that no one's ever heard of. When Han initially finds Luke, he's like freaking out, saying, "Yoda, Dagobah system," and it's like, I can't imagine what must be going through Han's head. It's like, sure, Luke, Dagobah system, Yoda, whatever. Because he does sound like he's completely nutty at that point, but then I guess he would be because he is dying of hypothermia, but still.
Ben! Dagobah system! Ben!
It's like, but Ben's
I
dead.
don't want to know what happened there. Cut open Tauntaun, shove him in.
It's like, sure, Ben, sure, I got you, Luke, I got you. So, okay, they can't land, the Empire cannot land immediately outside of Echo Base because there's a shield generator up, so they have to prepare for a surface attack. This is where awesomeness shall indeed ensue. So, they've got several different vehicles that sadly that have started to get mocked today for some reason. And I can kind of understand why people are mocking them, but at the same time, it's one of those things of, it's supposed to be cool. You've got the AT-AT, which is the All-Terrain Armored Transport, which is a four-legged gargantuan mech. And then, of course, you have the AT-ST, although in the original, I don't think you...
brief.
Yeah, you don't see it much.
There's literally one scene where you see it, and that's it.
Alright,
And
that's what I thought.
to those mocking the AT-AT and AT-ST, all I've got to say is, hike in the mountains for a change. Try to take a wheeled or tracked vehicle through that. Good luck.
And in the novel, they actually didn't even have them. What they had were what would come to be called the Juggernaut tank, which we would actually see on screen in Episode 3. But the AT-ATs just look awesome. I mean, I think like Family Guy mocked them as like walking mechanical camels or something. It's like,
That joke's been around since the movie came out. I mean,
Pretty much.
oh no, I mean it sincerely, because before the first Atari 2600 game for Empire Strikes Back came out, its codename was Attack of the Mutant Camels.
Yep.
And from the programmers who went on to make Llamasoft, Jeff Minter created his own version called Attack of the Mutant Llamas.
Space Llamas. Now, in this scene, we see an epic duel between these vehicles and both a ground contingent of rebels and Rogue Squadron. This would, of course, be the first appearance of the world-famous Rogue Squadron, which would get their own books, their own games, and everything. And this is where it started out. And we see them flying snowspeeders. Now, at one time, I kind of maligned the snowspeeder. I like the design, and I have the 1990s reissue of the original toy. But there was a time when I was like, well, that was literally designed just to sell toys. Why don't they just use the X-Wings, which should be way better? But, you know, it's one of those things. It's a cool new ship. Why knock it?
Well, that and the snowspeeders, it was meant for terrestrial combat. The X-Wing isn't.
My thought with that is, like, shouldn't the X-Wing go, like, way faster, though, since it is designed for space combat?
It is faster,
that's
but...
probably why it's not meant for ground combat.
Yeah, that and the fact that, okay, you've got a shield generator. It's a bubble. If you want to operate within that bubble, that's not enough operational time to be flying an X-Wing unless you're, you know, doing VTOL mode. You know, one good pass and you're out of that bubble. Congratulations, you're going to get shot down like a silly fly.
I suppose that is true. But then again, like, why didn't they put, like, some missile launchers or something, which would be better for the AT-ATs? But then again, if they had done that, we wouldn't get use your harpoon and tow cables. I remember, like, every single line from that segment, too. It's like, the harpoon and tow cables, okay? It's like, how do you take out an AT-AT? Well, you can't shoot it because its armor is too thick. So what do? You tie it up!
Makes sense.
Use gravity to your advantage, and, well, no superstructure of any tank or any walking vehicle can withstand crushing its own self.
And what's also particularly hilarious is one of the later short stories would actually have a stormtrooper basically say, like, yeah, this is going to be a big, big weakness. And he got shunted off to, like, the ass end of nowhere, a.k.a. Tatooine. He's actually, the character who actually pointed that out was the guy who said, look, sir, droids. So you have a really excellent scene with all of these snow speeders, all these troops fighting. It's absolutely exquisite with what they were able to do. It doesn't feel like a fake sci-fi battle. It's really quite hard to describe if you haven't seen the film. A lot of sci-fi ground battles just look fake. It looks like something designed by an art student. Whereas with this, it looks like it's a competent military engagement, more or less. Yeah, there's a few, you know, silly bits, but mostly it works. And I think that's why I liked it so much as a kid, is because it felt real. It had a lot of weight to it.
Well, yeah, I understand that Star Wars started out as, okay, let's take Arthurian legend, let's put it in sci-fi, let's make it serialized, let's have all of our weapons and prop designs based off of equipment we can easily get, i.e. the D-11 blaster. Hey, let's take World War II weapons, which are decommissioned. So the battle tactics actually are from World War II when it comes to land battles.
Which works. So there's also a little bit of swashbuckling as well. So like when Luke gets shot down, he's able to get out of his snowspeeder in time before the AT-AT crushes it. And in a pure swashbuckling thing, he shoots out this Python gun. And this is where the music really comes in. I'd love to be able to play for you some music, but, you know, get taken down immediately. Is the music swells, he shoots up this AT-AT with the Python gun. He pulls out his lightsaber, the music is just absolutely spot on. He slices open a hole in it, tosses in a thermal detonator, and blows it up. It is something that when you see it, it's like, why can't all, like superhero or action films have something like this?
No, because they'd have to channel a bit of Errol Flynn.
It's just absolutely beautiful. Now, of course, the rebels end up losing the Battle of Hoth, as you would expect. And everybody, well, our main heroes are able to escape. And this is where the film kind of, it doesn't fall flat. It does something I don't really like these days, but was fine with it back then. One of the big problems with Star Wars going forward is, from Episode 4 is the big three are never actually together. Because for the rest of the film, the big three are not together. Han and Leia go off on their own, and Luke goes to Dagobah. At no time do they actually all three meet up.
Well, it can get a bit annoying, but this is a case where they actually have to tell separate stories. They can't... To get this all done with all of them together would have been incredibly hard to do, because you got to plan the timing of everything where it's, and not make it seem like one giant Deus Ex Machina.
It's just, I kind of like the big three because they have really good chemistry together. Now, when it comes to the Han and Leia stuff, I actually prefer that to the Luke and Yoda stuff. I feel when Luke gets to Dagobah that the film just kind of slows down, and I even felt that back in the day as well. Especially when you compare what goes on in each respective storyline.
Yeah, I got to agree with you there. I definitely preferred their stuff because it seemed more like it was a non-stop desperate escape attempt, I mean, Luke and Yoda, it was just, I'm going to fuck around on a jungle planet while, R2-D2 trips over everything and, I got this green thing on my back. It was just, you always got that feeling, though, that they were always trying to escape and they were barely just one step ahead. Meanwhile, in the Millennium Falcon, and that really helped push things along. I mean, especially once they hit that asteroid scene, because that was the coolest thing ever. A little bit of comedy. I don't know how we're going to get out of this one, and then they hit the asteroid, and the whole toolbox falls on his head.
I still remember that.
It also works as a humanizing moment for Han.
It was definitely a humanizing thing because it cemented him as a hero. Because it was just, he's doing everything that he possibly can in this gigantic hunk of shit, and it's finally proving itself to be the broken down turd that everybody says that it is at the worst possible times, Oh, we're gonna outrun him. Watch this. You hear, but I fixed it. I fixed it.
Space 18-wheeler. There's unfortunately no roadside assistance he can call.
Yeah, there's no triple X-wing. It's fucking the best part to me. I just thought it was so cool. Like, this is when I wanted to be Han Solo. Was when the Star Destroyer was chasing him, and then he quick flipped it around. Sir, the odds of surviving a direct frontal confrontation with a Star Destroyer, blah, 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 to 1! Never tell me the odds. And he still does it anyways.
Now, when I first saw that part of that scene, I actually didn't even know what happened. It's like, wait, how did he get there? They didn't explain that. It really is one of those blink and you miss it kind of things.
It's like they're actually going to try to go after us. And you, as it barely misses the bridge. It's like, where'd they go? And then the next scene, you find it clamped to the back end of it, and they can't find it. I thought that was the coolest thing ever.
Although the scaling's a little off. Either that bridge is really small, or the Millennium Falcon is really big.
Well, there's parts of the bridge which aren't, which are mostly gear as opposed to, this is walkable crew quarters.
I mean, how many people are really meant to be on the bridge, Everybody's manning turbo lasers.
It is true. I think it's really one of the big issues when going from Yoda to Han and Leia. It's like, you got Yoda, it's like, use the Force, and then boom, you got Vader, you got Han and Leia just flying around. It's kind of a tonal whiplash there.
Well, yeah, because as kids, what are you naturally going to gravitate towards? Are you going to watch the action? Or are you going to watch the talking? What is a child going to want to see?
That's a good question. And it's
political discussions about taxation.
Oh, that's coming. Oh, that's coming.
Imperial taxation.
Without representation.
you know. But yeah, it's just that was the big difference between the two scenes, and that's kind of where things did slow down a bit. I mean, it was very critical to the whole lore of the story to show Luke, you know, learning and training, even though that thing did confuse the shit out of me when he cut the Phantom Darth Vader's head off, and you saw Leia's head underneath it all.
It was Luke.
It was Luke? Oh, it looked
Yeah,
like Leia.
it was Luke.
But you see, that's, well, as a kid, I was like, what the, who the hell is that? You know, but it's just, that's all you really got out of it. And then, bam, all of a sudden you got Han Solo doing all this awesome stuff. You know, he's got C-3PO bitching in the background. He's got Chewbacca losing his shit. You got Princess Leia being a bitch, you know? What are you going to do now? And he's like, you know what, bitch, you're going to go out with the fucking garbage chute. It's just... It's just Han Solo fucking winning nonstop, and this is where Captain Needa gets choked out too, because I don't know if that's what you're referring to with the arrogant part, but he was like, "Oh, I'll fly over there and I'll accept personal responsibility," and then the next scene, apology accepted, Captain Needa.
And see, that's the thing. It's like those Imperial captains just think that they can get away with anything for whatever reason. Which I guess, you know, when you're not part of a fleet, you're kind of like God on your own ship. So it's like, yeah, he'll be fine. He'll be cool. No, he's gonna...
No.
He knew he was in deep shit.
Now, what's
Your accuracy doesn't carry when your boss is a Sith Lord.
Well, I mean, just watch Captain Needa when he was like second guessing that thing over. It wasn't like, oh, don't worry about it, I'll go over there. He was like, I'll accept full responsibility. I'll go inform Lord Vader. You know, I think it was really just the captain knowing that unless he went over and accepted responsibility, Vader would have probably just turned that whole fucking Star Destroyer into a cube.
That or a charnel house, hard to tell.
But I if anything, that's kind of like a bit noble to me, because I just had that feeling that Captain Needa knew that he was going to die. I mean, if you just watch his body language and the way that he was going, either that was how it was written, or I think that's the story that the character, you know, the actor playing Captain Needa was trying to go for, was just, all right, if I don't go over and suck this up, we're all going to die. So, you just don't forget about me, type of shit, you know?
He actually ends up getting screwed even worse than that, because in the later novels, his entire family gets kicked out of the Navy too. With like, well, I think like his cousin or something gets relegated to a satellite.
That's very German Army World War II era type shit.
That being said, though, while they may get screwed being set to a satellite, not that bad actually. Compared to what could happen in the Star Wars universe, that's a vacation.
Compared to dealing with Darth Vader's ass, yeah.
Of course, he ended up dying anyway, but whatever. Because Rogue Squadron blew him up. But that aside, now Captain Needa would actually first appear in Episode 3's novelization, because yeah, I'm a fucking nerd, what of it? And he's actually supposed to be fairly competent in that, if I'm not mistaken. And he even was a commander of one of my favorite Star Wars ship types, a Crack-class cruiser. So, anyway, Needa gets choked out, and I think when the Millennium Falcon is released from the released to go out with the garbage, I think that's the first time you actually see Boba Fett. Or I think it might have been slightly beforehand. I cannot remember the exact sequence of the scenes.
Well, it depends on what version that you're watching, because if you're watching the Special Ed edition, you see Bubba Fett in the New Hope outside with fucking Blabba the Hutt. But,
yeah.
First appearances of Bubba Fett to me was when they called all the mercenaries in at once.
Yeah, that's the proper way.
That to me was I'm pretty sure that was the first time that you originally see Bubba Fett. You know, I mean, he was with IG. Didn't they add IG-88 into the later version, or was he always there too?
He was there, but it was only for like just the briefest of shots.
Yeah, they put them all in there, and it was just. But I want them alive. No disintegrations, as you wish.
And they, of course, changed his voice in, like, every single goddamn re-release.
Oh.
I liked it right the first time.
They changed it really later because, we gotta find a new voice actor because we plan on, releasing the prequels. And then they changed their mind again.
Yeah, didn't they fuck up that time?
And speaking of a changed scene, later on we will get into the fact that the Emperor was like portrayed by like 3 different actors in one goddamn scene over the different editions.
Oh, not for nothing. The original Emperor and those Hollow videos creep me out.
Yeah.
He was a creepy bastard.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the final Emperor Palpatine that they replaced him with, you know, where they wanted to make it look more like the, you know, Emperor from Part 3. The latter one just looked like a fucking basement pedophile, your typical,
Yeah.
you know? But the original
John Wayne Gacy given the Force.
just somebody who knows Star Wars way more than we fucking do, and they're like 50 and their mother's decomposing body is on the first floor of the house type shit. You know, while they're in the basement going, yeah, it's a phaser.
That's a scary thought.
Oh man, but the way that they changed that shit up, it was absolutely stupid. I mean, we'll get into that later. I got shit to say about the expanded universe.
So after we, now of course I keep skipping around, but once again, you can probably guess what's going on because this is not a plot you haven't heard of. So before Han and Leia let themselves out with the garbage, we are introduced to the bounty hunters and the famous bounty hunters. We don't need that scum scene, and you have like Bosk and all the rest, Every single one of those bounty hunters would get their own short story in one of the EU books, and they're actually pretty well written. Even Boba Fett's, even though Boba Fett is an interesting character. He's also a very contentious character, especially these days, because he doesn't have much of a character and people love him so much. I mean, I like
He's
it.
a set of armor with Gary Stu inside at times.
Everybody blew up his story in their own direction, and I think that that sort of thing has really screwed up Bubba Fett's whole thing.
Yeah.
Might as well, because this is what I was saving for. Is I get it. Bubba Fett looked awesome, and they built him up to be this mythic thing. But let's face it, he's dead. He fell into a Sarlacc pit. And when I said that I've got words for the expanded universe, I had one of those books, and I don't like fan things like where they make up their own lore, because it's just, all right, dickhead, you're really going to change things? It's like where now the Predators have a name, and I can't pronounce it, and it's just, oh, well, now they have this established clan hierarchy and all this shit. Motherfucker, you did not write the goddamn character, and now it's like, so some dickhead wrote up a short story and people bought it, so now it's accepted canon. But back to the point is, I think it was Dengar was his name, the guy that was wrapped in all the white bandages.
Yes.
Yeah.
His ship was the Hound's Tooth.
No, that was
Right?
Bosk's. Technically, that was Bosk's ship.
Yeah. But that was the guy. It was the Hound's Tooth, and it was Dengar, I think. And I had his book, and like it was the one where they focused on IG-88 and this whole "I think therefore I am" thing, and they did that throughout the whole fucking book. I remember that much.
Well, I think therefore I am. Essentially, I hate to say this, but the writer of the IG-88 novel really ripped off Am from I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, but he did.
Love that game. That game was a classic. If anybody's never heard of I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream, that's one of the creepiest games you will ever play.
And the novelization is quite good too. The novel came first, but the game is really good, and it has Harlan Ellison doing the voice of Am. Check it out; it's quite good.
I definitely got to check it out. But back to the thing, because I could spend all day talking about that. They made a point to Bubba Fett was in the thing digested his armor, and then he set off a grenade and blew its stomach out, and he crawled out in the desert of Tatooine naked. Come on.
Yeah.
Even then, if you survived that, you're on that desert, an entire desert planet, nude.
But only Bubba Fett could survive it. Come on. You know what I'll buy? I will buy prequels with his amazing adventures. And you know what? That's usually what kills people, is you do awesome shit and something stupid happens. Like, a blind man smacking your jetpack with a pole and then you crash the ship and then fall down a dune and then the thing burps after it eats you. Like I said, I get it. He looked cool and he was mysterious and all that, but all this shit. But his story was there, and then someone else wrote a book where he did all this shit, and then it was just, where does this guy go? Oh, he's everywhere because he's Bubba Fett, the Mandalorian bounty hunter. Just fuck off with that.
And sometimes the mystery is better.
Exactly. You
now,
know,
of course, in the
Michael
later...
Myers was always scarier when you had to draw your own conclusion as to why he was killing people, instead of the whole, well, he grew up white trash and that's why, and then he grew into like a 7-foot tall, roided up Norwegian looking fucking thing.
Mm-hmm.
Or he was a member of a cult and was possessed by the devil, or whatever the case was.
Well, in the original one, he was just born without a conscience. He was just evil. That's it.
Yeah. He was just a sociopath who didn't give a
That
shit.
reminds me of the tangent of the Half-Life games. Like, do you really want them to answer all the questions? Because the answer could suck. The mystery
Yeah.
might have been better.
And I think that holds true with Bubba Fett, is because we didn't need a bunch of fucking hacks to write a story to let us know that he was badass.
Well, now we're getting
us as fans had already figured out that Bubba Fett is not one to be trifled with.
I think they're making a TV series, so it's like, you know, we'll see.
I don't want to
So
know.
instead of, a great mystery bounty hunter who, is perceived as a threat, we get the amazing knee dart using Boba Fett.
Yeah,
Yes, that's
right?
actually a thing.
My knee dart. Yeah, I remember that, and I thought it was the stupidest shit I ever heard. I like the idea that even Darth Vader, wasn't afraid of him, but at least thought about it before doing it. You know?
There is actually a comic where he, it's a non-canon comic, where he uses a lightsaber against Darth Vader and doesn't necessarily win, but doesn't die immediately. So there's that.
Yeah, Darth Vader would have just grabbed him by the fucking helmet and crushed it.
Yeah.
Or by a different helmet and crush that.
Oh, God,
my.
no.
But anyways.
Now, Boba Fett would actually survive the Sarlacc, which we'll talk about in Return of the Jedi, but he would actually live long enough to almost die from clone cancer. Yes, that is a thing that I actually didn't really have a problem with, because that was one of the few good Legacy of the Force books. But anyway, back to the film. I'm kind of skipping over the stuff on Dagobah, but there's not much really to say. It's just Luke training, learning that he has darkness within him, and that he could fall to the dark side and crap like that. We, of course, have the epic scene where, Yoda's like, "Judge me by my size, do you?" And then he lifts up the X-Wing, which, once again, in the modern era, isn't that big of a deal, because, Galen Merrick, he can just pull down a Star Destroyer.
Well,
I agree with skipping the Dagobah thing, too. I'm sorry to cut you off.
That's
I
fine.
agree with it because all you're seeing in Dagobah, it's just a bunch of flipping and a bunch of vague answers.
This is true. That and the
Which
fact
is the
that
Clone Wars.
yeah, Raver Wars, exactly. But that being said, remember, this film was put out before, the whole Rocky montage. So it was either drag the scenes or, oh wait, that's all we can do. We have no idea of what we can.
At least they didn't drag. You can look at that.
I'd rather them show Luke being trained than just Luke knowing everything.
Unlike a different character, who shall remain nameless.
Well, that's almost any and every modern fictive fork these days.
Yeah, for the ADD audience.
Well, not just the ADD audience. It's the fact that, have you seen a movie in the last 15 years? It's nothing but Mary Sue's and Gary Stu's. And they never work for anything. They'll always have it handed to them.
It's like Luke just found a magical Force crystal arc reactor, and he's good at everything all again. So, anyway, we move on, and we finally make it to Cloud City. Now, Cloud City... Oh, well, also, once again, I missed yet another epic scene. The Millennium Falcon and Han and Leia eventually hide in what appears to be a cave. And surprise! It is a giant asteroid worm. And, despite this movie coming out in 1980, that thing actually looked legitimately creepy.
Yeah, the asteroid worm, yeah, the effect on it was really quite well done. They actually got the biological part of it looking pretty impressive and pretty believable. Would later go on to inspire a lot of enemies and a lot of shooters.
It kind of reminded me of Moby Dick.
As an aside, I could see Han, going all Captain Ahab.
Which is the white asteroid.
that shit. That whole scene was absolutely hilarious because the thing started rumbling, and you had no idea. It was just, why is it so moist and all this stuff, and it's really humid in here. And then it's just the thing starts rumbling, and Han's like, "Wait a minute!" And then he blasts the goddamn ground and pisses it off. And they're like, "We got to get out of here now!"
Time move.
I think that might have also, in some respects, inspired the various Jurassic Park chase scenes. The must go faster, must go faster.
Oh, the thing that they completely rehashed in Independence Day.
Hey, I like that. I'm like the only person who unironically likes Independence Day.
And yes, actually, it
I like the
inspired
first one.
both.
Well, the walls are closing. Those aren't walls. What? And then you see the teeth, and you're like, uh-oh. It's just that's the best way that I could put the whole Han Solo saga, this movie with all the characters. It was just literally out of the frying pan, into the fire, into the oven, into the broiler, and then on right to the fucking floor, which is lava.
That is also poisonous.
Blowtorches everywhere. That and Flammenwerfers, tons of them.
It's like fucking up at I Am Bread.
Yeah, a good way to put it.
Or Super Star Wars. Because goddamn is this game hard. For some reason my invincibility cheat doesn't work. And all I gotta say is, I don't know how, as a kid, I got anywhere in this game.
Come on, Lotz, use the Force.
We were a lot better back then.
Although, ironically enough, I'm better at some of the more modern Star Wars games than I was back then, like Rogue Squadron. I remember being really difficult. It's actually pretty easy.
You're getting old, John.
Hey,
I'm getting back up to form. I just beat Mega Man without using the Buster today.
That is utterly insane.
Nice.
Well, it's technically impossible because once you get the Woodsman stage, you have to kill the wolves that throw the flame at you. You can't just go past them. And then an Airman stage, you had the guys on the clouds that were throwing lightning bolts. And unless you've got a shit ton of E-tanks and like perfect timing, you can't even use the item 1 thing to get through it. And it's not like you can use a jet to get past because you have to kill Airman. But I still say that I beat it. I had to bend the rules a bit, but then after I bent the rules, I went back to enforcing it and I went through it. So maybe I could take on Super Star Wars at some point.
Well, all I can say is, may the Force be with you!
No, fuck the Force. I'm going to need a lot of extra drywall if I'm going to play Super Star Wars.
May the Schwartz be... Anyway, speaking of Schwartz, we now move on to Cloud City, where we are introduced to the second coolest character in the entire franchise, Lando Calrissian, as played by Billy D. Williams.
Proper Lando Calrissian, not this new age, Don Glover or Dong Lover, depending on how you take it.
We need not let that detain us at this time. Because I've got a lot of complaints about that, especially since I actually read the Lando Calrissian novels, where, he actually does have a robot buddy, but it never... They're just work friends, okay? They do not engage in any other activities. Just saying.
Oh, no walking. Never mind.
Are they really going down that route?
Yes. Oh, they went down that route.
Why? Because
Disney.
It's because of the era.
No, it's because of Disney. Disney is out to ruin everything that you.
No, they just have to add it in to make it inclusive, which makes absolutely.
No, it's not even inclusive. It's not that. It's actually not. Trying to apply logic to it is like trying to talk politics with a rabid chihuahua. You're going to accomplish nothing, and you're just going to feel like an ass afterwards. It's Disney.
It's not like you never apply logic to this anyway. It's Lando Calrissian fucking a robot.
Not just a robot. Anything that moves doesn't have to be
Lando,
sentient.
you're quite good at turning me on. Oh, sorry.
Clang, clang, clang.
Error.
Crush, kill, destroy.
Please insert meat ticket.
I love
that's
you,
why that
Lando
Russian
Calrissian.
robot broke.
So what can be said about Lando, though? The real Lando, the Billy D. Lando.
He was awesome. He was like the classic definition of cool.
It was like him and Harrison Ford were having a cool contest.
And
Question is, who won?
I don't know. It could be a draw. I think honestly, it has to be a draw.
I think Lando might edge it out just because after, he's done doing administrator duties, he likes to sit back with a nice, cool Colt 45.
Or Amasek, whichever the case may be. Let's see. So, the initial meeting between Han and Lando is quite interesting, actually. It starts out where they kind of fake you out, like... Because you gotta remember, you gotta put your mind into the time when this came out. No one even heard of a Lando Calrissian, so you thought that might be yet another fight. Because he's, like,
you got a lot of nerve showing up here after what you did.
And now, of course, today, if you actually know what he's talking about, what actually ended up happening is Han was supposed to give him a cut of some stolen goods, but Han's then girlfriend, because yes, Han had a girlfriend before Leia, actually took it all for the Rebel Alliance. So that's and Lando thought Han was in on it, but by this point, I guess Lando had finally forgiven him for it, or just didn't care that much.
Well, he was running Cloud City. Are you really gonna bitch and moan about like $500?
Well, that's a good question.
I run a gas giant and I sell to both sides. How dare you take away my fucking $500?
Not even a gas giant. He's running essentially. All right, all the lasers you see in Star Wars aren't lasers. They're actually charged photonic weapons. They all run off the same energy source, ionized Tibonic gas. Lando is the one controlling the major, majority source of this ionized Tibonic gas. This guy makes, the owner of Virgin Interactive look like he's on Skid Row dirt poor.
Lando could afford to build a wall in the clouds.
Easily.
And then some.
You can literally build 1 million droid versions of Princess Leia. But anyway, Gynoid Leia aside, that actually is yet another Star Wars reference, because yes, I'm a fucking nerd. And there is a Gynoid Leia in a book that was considered non-canon even back when the EU was new.
Sorry, but I'm going to have to do this. Nerd!
Damn straight. Okay, so the initial Cloud City scenes are initially optimistic, but you can always tell there's sort of an undercurrent of malice going on. You're not really sure if they're really safe or not. And then, of course, C-3PO gets blown up by the Ugnaughts, the space Oompa Loompas. At least that's how I saw them at the time. Because they look like Oompa Loompas, but from space.
Spoiler, it's what a Jawa is underneath the hood. Actually, no, it's not. You don't want to see what's underneath the Jawa's hood.
Yes, it's
I've seen Phantasm. I know what the Jawas look like underneath the hood.
It's very heretical. God damn, this game is hard.
Exterminatus would need to be applied if you see what's underneath the Jawa's hood. Just don't ask.
Don't ask, don't tell. But anyway, that aside. So, Lando, of course, explains what Cloud City is. And he even kind of drops a couple of hints as to what might be going on. It's like, I recently set up a deal, so I won't have to worry about the Empire anymore. And then, of course, surprise, Vader. And this is where subverting expectations in a good way. Because at this point, you assume Lando's going to be, the villain. But as it would turn out, he is not. And,
essentially, he's forced into his role in this case. Not really a villain, just basically a reluctant, I got no choice.
And you start to actually feel bad for Lando after a while because, he's seeing Han Solo get tortured and Vader is just an asshole in this movie. I don't get why Luke actually, forgives him in the next. It's like he constantly... Wait, what?
He doesn't see this part.
He better not have, because, damn, he's constantly going back on the deal he has with Lando. He's just, well, like I said in, Episode 4, he's just a giant black monster in all ways, because damn. Initially, he's supposed to let Leia and Chewie stay on Cloud City, but it's like, just send them to my Star Destroyer. It's like, perhaps you feel you've been treated unfairly? Eventually, he pushes Lando too far, and Lando rebels.
Well, it's kind of hard to do so when you've got, one of the most powerful Force-using individuals, 7 foot tall, cybernetically augmented to all hell, and with a generally sourly attitude from the fact that all the bio-augmentations that he's got to keep him alive generally cause him massive discomfort. You don't generally want to annoy someone like that face to face. Behind their back, on the other hand, that's a different story.
It's actually kind of a hilarious scene when Lando actually does go against the Empire because he lets loose Leia and Chewie immediately starts choking him out. It's like, and the only reason Chewie doesn't snap his neck is because he keeps saying Han and saying we can rescue him, but that does not actually. I missed the entire Han Solo and Carbonite scene. It's kind of like I know so much about this movie, and yet I just keep constantly skipping to parts that I like. So yeah, of course you have the climactic Han Solo getting frozen in Carbonite. Now, initially this was supposed to be where Han Solo is supposed to die, because for whatever reason Harrison thought that Han Solo should die in the second movie.
Pepsi, please.
Wait, what?
Oh, sorry, my daughter was asking if I needed anything out of the kitchen, and I asked for a Pepsi.
No.
He wants his space Pepsi.
Space Pepsi. But yes, for some reason, Harrison thought that Han Solo needed to die in the second movie, and I'm not really sure why he thought that.
Because you knew that what was going to happen in the next one.
Off topic, the sentence popped in my head. I love you, Pepsi.
I think he knew.
Sorry.
I think Harrison Ford just knew that it would become a shit show.
Maybe. I mean, he didn't know what the script would be. I mean, nobody did.
Yeah, but
not even Lucas.
Who
but
knows?
You could probably get a hint on it. I mean, one could get an intuition that things go south pretty quick, but.
What are you talking about?
You're already working on another one. Yeah, this one's gonna have a lot of fucking Muppets in it.
I am not looking forward to that review. That is for sure. Because back to Empire of the Happiness. So it's a very climactic scene. It's a very well done scene and a very emotional scene as well. And it's one of those things where the actor really does contribute a great deal to the film. The original line was not "I know." The original line was instead "I love you too," which would have sounded so lame. If it had been anyone but Harrison, the "I know" line wouldn't have happened, I think.
Yeah. And he did it so perfectly.
It's like, I know. It's like, oh my god, Han Solo is literally God. And so, of course, he gets frozen in Carbonite. Now, I think around this time, doesn't Luke show up?
Yeah, right after.
Which is good timing for him.
Not really. His friend's just been frozen in a block of carbon.
Well, okay, bad timing. But, Han will survive. He won't go blind. There's actually a comic where he does go blind, and he actually ends up making a great shot on the Endor shield generator. But anyway, that aside, that comic is actually much better than the film. But anyway, so Luke shows up, and then, we have a climactic battle between him and Darth Vader. Now, while this is happening, of course, you have the stuff with Lando and letting free Chewie and Leia. Now, the lightsaber duel between Darth Vader and Luke is a rather interesting one because canonically that is not the first time they've dueled. There was actually a novel released a year after Star Wars came out called Splinter of the Mind's Eye. That was basically, if Star Wars had failed, that was going to be Lucas's sequel. It was the novel's actually pretty good, but it was set on planet Cheap, by which I mean a swamp planet filled with mist and things of that nature, and no Harrison, because Harrison doesn't come cheap. And in that particular novel, Luke ends up finding a special crystal that is super amazing and awesome. Long story short, he and Darth Vader duel, and he actually is able to slightly defeat Darth Vader because Obi-Wan Kenobi possesses him. Oops. You'll never hear that happening again. At the end of it, though, the first on-screen duel between Vader and Luke is pretty good. Because the entire time, you know Luke is completely outmatched, but Luke actually puts up a decent fight.
In fact, if you're going by the RPG system, this is actually where Luke first gets his first few dark side points. He fights out of anger here.
That's always one thing I've always found kind of annoying, though. It's like, but is that like a bad thing to fight out of anger, though? Like, why exactly would anger make you go nuts and become a Sith Lord?
Now, it's death by degrees, man. A little bit here, a little bit there, and it causes just things to kind of go south. From someone who's actually stepped into the ring, you never want to fight from a position of anger. You want to be cool, calm, and collected. Having anger just means you're a lot more likely to do rash things. And it does cost Luke here.
Yeah, because while Luke can get a couple of hits on Vader, he ends up getting his arm cut off, and yet another very
hand cut off.
Whatever. I think it's more than just a hand. I think like he got his whole forearm off.
Good chunk of his forearm is lopped clean off.
And of course, that's the famous scene that's been parodied and referenced for the
Parodied
past.
incorrectly.
Yeah, because it's not Luke, I am your father. It's no, I am your father.
No, that's not possible.
I do like the Robot Chicken sketch where it mocks the prequels, though.
All those
It's like-
sketches are pretty good.
And I
Yeah,
created...
generally.
Wait, go on.
The only good thing they've ever did with Boba Fett was him just sitting there giving the finger to Han. You could see that happening, because you know he's underneath that helmet. He's got to have a shit-eating grin on.
I would actually like to see that, unless of course his emotions were removed via laser, like in the Bounty Hunters War series. I don't know if that's true. If that was that supposed to be a?
That's a joke.
Okay, I guess I must remember that like they were trying to be serious. Because I always remember that. It's like, oh yeah, I had my emotions lasered out. It's like, really? You're gonna go that far?
No, it was delivered in such a deadpan way. I can see where you're taking it serious, but no, it was his attempt at just being almost Bob Newhart deadpan humorous. Thing
Bob
is,
Newhart,
you get so deadpan, eventually the humor goes over a lot of people's heads, so you got to be really careful with that.
So he did not have it lasered out then. Good.
No.
It's like, I get it. Mace Windu cut your dad's head off. It doesn't mean you have to go and basically be the Star Wars Galaxy equivalent of a tryhard. But anyway, Boba tryhard aside, the whole setup for the duel between Vader and Luke is nothing short of exquisite in terms of its pacing and direction and the fact that they get the lighting absolutely right. You know, I was thinking about this earlier today. You know, I think the Darth Maul duel kind of drew some inspiration from this, but it doesn't do it nearly as well. Mainly because it's way too brightly lit. The way they have Darth Vader lit, you can just see all of that malice that he brings. And it's like...
Yeah, the red lightsaber also doesn't hurt that in any way, shape, or form, because you've got a giant, near 7 foot tall, cybernetic individual, angry as hell, going through some physical pain, and the most of the lighting on him is red.
And it's like, Luke, just give up. Get out of there. Don't even try. But he loses his arm, and of course we learn that Darth Vader is Luke Skywalker's father. Now, the original script...
Oh my god. Oh wait, sorry.
And that was an oh my god moment. Can you imagine being in the audience seeing that for the first time?
That's why that nobody knew the script of this until literally the first airing. They wanted to make sure nobody saw this coming.
I mean, that is actually on par with the Spock death. Because no one... Surely you're not going to kill off Spock. Well, no, Spock's dead. And surely Darth Vader can't... Well, actually, I don't think anyone even had conceived of the idea that Darth Vader could be Luke Skywalker's father. I mean, that's just like... That is utterly bizarre. It's like where... You know, Kirk's father is really Khan or something. You know, it's just like something...
Oh my god, sorry. That would be very bizarre.
He did the pasty and the nasty.
Be like...
Or the nasty
Time
and
paradox.
Yeah.
Created a time paradox.
That's almost as bad as those The Predator alternate endings, but that's a different topic for another day.
Yes, it is. It's like, why would it be Newt or Ripley? What kind of sense does that make?
I don't know.
I'm gonna need a whole lot more alcohol for that discussion.
Yeah. So of course, you got Vader saying that, and then Luke is all like, I would rather die than join the dark side. At least I think he says that. And then just throws himself down the Cloud City air shaft. Now the special edition adds a scream, which
Just the VHS version.
Okay, good. I actually do remember that scream after all these years, which was really, really stupid. And Luke gets kind of lucky because, surprise, Leia also is force sensitive, and I don't know how he knew that, though. Okay, how exactly did Luke know that Leia was force sensitive enough to actually get the whole Leia, hear me thing?
He didn't. It was a wild-ass guess. I mean, he's sitting there hanging on the antenna for what seems like ages. You think his grip's going to give out.
Leia.
And so, of course, Leia does hear him, and they rescue him. And so, the film ends with him getting a new arm, and everyone just kind of staring off into space, literally.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one thing that people do like to bring up is, why exactly does Lando wear Han's clothes at the end? All I gotta say about that is, it kind of makes sense. Lando had to evacuate Cloud City, and he didn't have any other clothes?
It is supposed to just metaphorically be a changing of the guard, saying, okay, well, here's your new rogue hero. But I prefer to think of it in this bizarre headcanon way of, yeah, you borrowed these from me, I'm taking them back.
I kind of like that. So, that of course is Empire Strikes Back. Yeah, it was kind of scattershot, but no sleep. And a film I've seen so many times, I just kind of skipped every scene that I like. So, here is the first question, now that we've gone through the entire film. Would you have liked it if Han Solo had actually died and Lando replaced him? How would you have felt about that?
From a writer's perspective, it actually would have made things a lot harder if Han died. To seal up a lot of loose ends, you would have to write entirely new scenarios. Now, that being said, it would have a lot more impact, emotionally on the viewer, but I don't know if they'd want to go that route.
I think it would have definitely been an interesting thing to do, and I think that today they probably would have done that. Just for that extra bit of shock value. It's like, not only is Darth Vader Luke Skywalker's father, but Han's dead!
Well, remember, we understood that they gave the whole, he's got life science. If that's something that it was still up in the air. It's like, okay, yeah, he's alive now, but like I say, he's in a block of carbonite. No air. If that little display on the side of the slab goes down, he's dead.
That is true. Or brain dead, which would definitely be bad. So, overall, I feel it's a better film than Episode 4, but there are elements that I don't like. I really don't like that they separated Luke and Han and Leia. I feel like the big three were such a great power trio that having them be separated, it kind of lost something. Also, the film was actually surprisingly contained compared to Episode 4. There's not that many locations, And gone is Mos Eisley and other places like that. We don't actually see the real world of Star Wars in this. We just see, the actual military locations or a swamp planet. We see a little tiny bit of Cloud City, but not much. So I feel it's a bit limited in that respect.
Yeah, but what's presented there is very lived-in details. While it is a much smaller scope and scale, what's there is actually quite believable. I mean, you can tell Cloud City is very much an industrial complex. You can tell that, Dagobah basically makes Louisiana look like a friggin' desert. And you can tell Hoth is pretty much like stepping into the biggest deep freeze you've ever seen.
Now, it was actually filmed in Norway, and evidently it was during the middle of a blizzard, and they actually just shot the camera out the window. Which, damn. I'm glad I don't live there, just saying.
I only know one person who lives in Norway, and they're a stout individual.
Well, you'd need it not to freeze to death. The music for Episode 5, I feel, is a bit better than Episode 4's music. You, of course, have the legendary Imperial March that, I could listen to that thing all day. I actually like the version that comes on the Galactic Battleground CD. There's just something about it that it is just the best cut imaginable.
Yeah, it's a more dramatic mix.
And the Imperial March is actually played throughout the entire film. There's even an up-tempo version when one of the Death Stars is closing in on something. The other music also works quite well as well. The Battle of Hoth music is also a feast for the ears. I really like that sting when Luke does his little swashbuckling thing of slicing open the AT-AT and tossing in the thermal detonator. I mean, that just, it is a thing of beauty. And then, of course, you have the Asteroid Suite as well. That is something that even in 8-bit, because yes, it's an 8-bit version, it still just sounds nothing short of amazing.
Yeah, definitely. The sound design really comes into its own here. And the fact that you mentioned it is 8-bit, yeah, these compositions withstand even the most base deconstruction fairly well. It's pretty amazing how well composed they are, to the fact that you can render them on sound chips, which, at best have, 3 to 4 voice channels and maybe one static wave, and they can still come off as convincing and still spark some emotion.
So, Rage Gillian, what is your final opinion on Empire Strikes Back?
I think it's a perfect film, perfect sequel.
Were there any things you want different in it?
No. It's like the argument of, is there anything Special Edition does better? It's like, it's additional icing, which can be fine, but it doesn't improve the film any. The film's already perfect, so... none of the whole training scenes and stuff never really bothered me. So, geez, it's like, what do you say about a film or a film series that's so ingrained in the pop culture and consciousness of so many, it's just, it's just perfect. That's all I got, really. It's like,
all right. Wolfman, what do you think? He got taken by the Pepsi monster, I think.
Better Pepsi ban.
Not Pepsi, man. I thought he was good. He turned to the dark side. He just hated Coke so much. He racked up those dark side points, and just wasn't the same since.
If I'm ranking the film so far, I'd say that A New Hope is a little slow, but really good. Empire's definitely more actiony and has a lot more kind of cool twists and stuff.
So, Rainick, what is your... you finished, Rachel?
I was gonna say I'll save my thoughts for Eternal and get to it, though I, really enjoyed that one too. I know some people have problems with certain aspects of it, but...
I've got one big problem with Return of the Jedi, or Revenge of the Jedi, depending on how you take it. That being said, I'm still going to rank Empire Strikes Back as, of all the films, my top slot. for the simple fact that yes, the build-up is slow, but I'm going to be honest here. After this, I found myself, tending to prefer slower movies, which, build upon their characters and world in a more organic way, as opposed to, oh my god, action all the time. Yes, I do. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, that's definitely...
Oh, sorry. I was gonna say. I think as long as you have great storytelling, you can slow down and not bore your audience.
Well, don't get me wrong. I like action, and as I often joke, when I state, "Oh wow, it's almost like they got these these movies right. Like there's a war amongst the stars."
And I was just going to say that when it comes to action all the time, that's one of the big issues with the modern-day Star Trek films. Not the STD crap, but the J.J. Abrams Star Trek films, is that it never slows down. It never stops. That's also the problem with a lot of the Marvel films as well. It's like, it's just constant. It never ends. Whereas Empire really knows how to pace its action. Seems there's a lot of action in it. But there's time for the audience to breathe and really kind of reflect and just drink in what has happened.
Well, Jar Jar Abrams' biggest mistake was he completely negated the point of Star Trek. Absolutely. Oh, let's have a magical go-anywhere teleport device, which is about the size of a suitcase. Kind of makes starships pointless now, don't it?
I'd like to say, you can have, improved shield technology. That might help, maybe. I'm gonna at least pretend like maybe they could do that. And then the triple blood. But anyway, back to Star Wars. As far as I'm concerned, Empire Strikes Back is by far the best of the Star Wars films. It got everything right. Sadly, it got everything right, made a lot of money, because then, of course, we had to have the third sequel, and by that point, Lucas's head is so large, it had its own gravitational pull, and thus, Star Wars would start its long and sad decline. And whatever happened to Baby Wolfman, I do not know, but we
Baby Wolfman?
It's like whatever happened to Baby Jane,
Oh my god, Wolfman's been kidnapped.
Pepsi Man went to the dark side and kidnapped Wolfman. We must go rescue him.
On it.
He should have drank Coke. That's when it happened.
Or store brand. Alright, so I'm GeneralLotz.
Special K Cola. Oh, sorry, I'm a Rage Killer.
No, you're Special K Cola now. We're going to call you that from now on.
Oh, son of a bitch.
Okay, Special K. And I'm Renick.
And we're gonna go rescue Wolfman. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing, and if you can, please consider supporting me on Patreon so that I can continue bringing you this awesome content.